Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again. In this YouTube astrological segment, I'm going to be talking about the Galactic Center in astrology. Now, the Galactic Center can have a very powerful impact on someone's natal chart, I believe. It is the center of the Milky Way galaxy. And of course, the Milky Way galaxy is very prodigious in size. It's like 100 billion, it has like 100 billion stars, and in diameter, it's 100,000 light years. The Galactic Center can have, has exorbitant gravitational energy, and this could be a very powerful part of a person's chart. Now, right now, it is at 27 degrees Sagittarius, and this is really something that can the Galactic Center in one's natal chart. It shows that the area by house placement. It could show that sector of life where you could have a very profound impact on others. And this is something where you can really do something that is that could be very powerful. So anyway, also it can be something where you can really, where it's placed in your house. This is something that you can also view on a deep level, as opposed to just looking at something in a more basic or superficial manner. Now, and it could also, you may incorporate a spiritual element into that as well, especially if you are spiritual, of course. Now, let's take an example. Let's say that this is in one's second house in their natal chart. This could be a person that sees possessing good values is important or takes precedence over having an abundance of monetary possessions that have a lot of value in terms of how much money they are. Now, as far as, and also Galactic Center in one's second house in their chart, it could be a person that may define their own self-worth in money, and as far as in not money, and what their net worth is monetarily. It really, what it does is it gives a higher meaning as far as its placement, and as it gives that house expression a much higher meaning in many instances. Now, the thing too is, I'm going to give you an example. Like me, I have the Galactic Center in my 8th house in my natal chart. Of course, the 8th house governs astrology, so then, don't be flabbergasted or be in a state of shock over this. But anyway, at least in contrast to other areas of my life, this is where I feel perhaps I have maybe impacted others very strongly, and this is figured very prominently in my life. The Galactic Center is seen as really a very powerful point in astrology, and this is where you can often, not, I don't know if often, but at least at times, maybe impact people even globally as far as its highest potential can go. Now, renowned motivational guru, motivational speaker, Tony Robbins, he has his Galactic Center posited in his 3rd house in his natal chart. Again, don't be flabbergasted or be in a state of shock, people. And also, I believe he has Sagittarius on the cusp of his 3rd house. He also has the Galactic Center is also making a long conjunction to his natal Jupiter in his chart, which I believe is at Sagittarius at 29 degrees, at the full culmination of that planet. And being in Sagittarius, of course, it's in its dignity. So, we really see how he has impacted people through his voice, and really reached out to millions of people in the process. And he has had a very strong global impact on others as far as speaking to really enhance others' lives and to really incorporate a lot of positive thoughts in what he says in order to motivate others and to really and be very inspirational in the process, being very expansive and really using the power of positive thinking. So Tony Robbins, I think, is a great example of how the Galactic Center has impacted him in his life, and we're in that area in life where he's really had such a monumental impact on others. Now, let's take an example where it makes an aspect to a planet in your chart. Now, let's say somebody has the Galactic Center making a conjunction to their natal Neptune in their 7th house. Well, Neptune in the 7th house by itself could indicate somebody that could be an exceptional public speaker on the metaphysical or astrology. But I mean, when you have the Galactic Center, if it's making a conjunction to it, well, this could be done in a greater, and reach greater heights with this, and reach out perhaps to a greater audience and have more of an almost monumental impact on others in the process. And also what I neglected to mention before regarding the Galactic Center, where it's placed in your chart and by house, this could also be where you speak your own veritable, unabashed truth on something, on a matter or matters pertaining to that particular house. Now, anyway, what's also interesting about this Galactic Center is you look at some points in the past where this had conjunctions. Now, some notable ones: Galactic Center was making on February 23rd, 1987. The Galactic Center was a fairly close conjunction to Uranus, and supernova 1987A was seen at that particular time, and that was the first one, I guess you could say, as far as a naked eye observation, that had been seen in a very long time. So, and that really, and also keep in mind that Uranus is associated with science, and of course astronomy is a science, so you get the idea, because this was something that was observed that was really monumental at that particular time, because that supernova was that first one that had been seen, and I think close to, it wasn't quite 300 years, but close to 300 years. So anyway, also another interesting moment in history where the Galactic Center was making was making a conjunction to another planet. Now, on January 9th, 2007, the iPhone had been unveiled, and at that time, Pluto was making a conjunction to the Galactic Center. Now, I believe at this time, keep in mind, Pluto is about transformation. Now, Pluto, as far as this aspect goes, well, this advent of the iPhone really, in a lot of ways, transformed the way we communicated with others and had an interaction with others. Keep in mind, being in Sagittarius, Sagittarius is associated with Jupiter, and Jupiter is about our foreign countries and in foreigners. So this was a way where we interacted with people often on a global level. So I really, in people all over the world, and this I believe was made available to everybody, in all over the world, basically, or at least in many countries around the world. So I think that's where you see that connection. So anyway, people, well, one last thing I thought was interesting. I'm sorry, I got one last thing I wanted to say. Now, recently, and even mean, even in the last several months or so, even, there has been, of course, some talk from Donald Trump about setting up the Mexican wall. Now, it was interesting very recently, they were talking about the, I guess, like the criteria or the basic requirements for this wall. And right now, imagine this, Saturn is making a conjunction to the Galactic Center. As I talked about before, Sagittarius is associated with foreigners, foreign countries being given that rule by Jupiter. Saturn is about limitation and restriction. So it's interesting because now we might be seeing the final stages, perhaps, of this wall that's going to prohibit, or it's going to at least contain and control to a large degree, at the very least, Mexicans or people in Mexico coming over to the United States illegally. So I thought that's very interesting, and I really believe it may have something to do with the fact that Saturn is making a conjunction to the Galactic Center right now, at least at the time of this, time that I made this video, and the time this video is going to be uploaded to YouTube. Well, anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment for the Galactic Center in astrology, and stay tuned next time where I'll be continuing my series on the Black Moon Lilith in the houses. Two things I want to get with you on before I head out. Firstly, the stars may impel, but do not compel. And secondly, never isolate any single astrological element, aspect, planetary placement, position, configuration, influence, or what have you, and make an analysis of a person, astrologically speaking, based on this alone, because astrologically speaking, the person is the sum of all their components in their natal chart, and not just one. Until next time, people, stay well.